Cheryl Miller went on ESPN and said what every Caitlin Clark fan has been thinking for weeks, and she didn't hold back. After footage emerged of Stephanie White yelling at Clark on the bench, slamming her clipboard, and benching her star player at the worst possible moment, one of the most respected voices in the history of women's basketball decided enough was enough. Miller took that ESPN platform and sent a message directly to Stephanie White that the entire WNBA world is now talking about. And when you combine what Miller said with everything else that has happened inside the Indiana Fever organization this season, the picture that emerges is deeply concerning. Let's break it all down. First, let's talk about what started all of this. During Indiana's loss to Portland, Stephanie White pulled Caitlin Clark at the 6-minute 30-second mark of the first quarter. Indiana was winning. Clark had 3 assists in the first 3 minutes of the game. She was controlling everything. And White pulled her anyway because, as White herself admitted in the post-game press conference, that is just her typical substitution pattern. The moment Clark sat down, Portland went on a 13-2 run. The game was over before it really started. And what happened on that bench during the timeout before White made that decision is what sent shockwaves across the entire WNBA world. White got in Clark's face. She yelled at her. Clark threw her hands up in frustration and shook her head. White slammed her clipboard down. And then she pointed to Raven Johnson to sub in for her star player. The footage went viral within hours. And it wasn't just fans who noticed. ESPN noticed. Cheryl Miller noticed. And what happened next is why we are here today.
Now it's frustration, and unfortunately it's boiling over and it's being seen. It's one thing to have it behind closed doors, but when it spills over and when the coach has to basically say, hey, you know what, Caitlin, enough is enough, this is too disruptive, in and out, take a seat. What do you think?
I agree.
When Cheryl Miller says something on ESPN, it carries weight. This isn't a drama channel. This isn't a fan account on social media. This is one of the greatest players in the history of women's basketball, sitting on a national platform and telling the world that what is happening inside the Indiana Fever has gone too far. Miller saw the footage. She saw Clark getting yelled at on the bench. She saw the clipboard. She saw Clark's frustration. And she called it out directly. The frustration is boiling over, and it is being seen. That is Cheryl Miller's message to Stephanie White. You cannot hide this anymore. It has gone public, and the entire country is watching. But Miller didn't stop there. Because the incident on the bench is just a symptom of a much deeper problem that Miller identified clearly on that ESPN segment. Clark is being ISO'd defensively. Every team in the league has figured out that they can run isolation plays directly at Clark and create mismatches. Golden State exposed it first, and now every team Indiana faces is running the same playbook. And what has Stephanie White done to address it? What adjustments has she made to protect her star player from being targeted defensively on every single possession?
They're running a lot of ISO ball on Caitlin right now. That is what they're doing. Golden State exposed the ISO ball, and now everybody's finna run off with it. Stephanie White got to get Caitlin Clark some type of help in those type of situations, bro.
Stephanie White has got to give Caitlin Clark some type of help. That is a Hall of Fame player and ESPN analyst telling a WNBA head coach on national television that she is failing her star player. Not a fan, not a social media account. Cheryl Miller on ESPN, and she is completely right. Golden State exposed the ISO ball strategy weeks ago, and it has spread across the entire league. Every team Indiana plays now knows they can target Clark defensively and create easy baskets. And Stephanie White's response has been to yell at Clark on the bench and bench her during winning stretches, rather than make the tactical adjustments that would actually help her. Think about what Clark is dealing with on a nightly basis. She is getting ISO'd defensively on one end. She is getting physically targeted on the other end. She is absorbing elbows and scratches and constant physicality without adequate foul protection. She is managing a back injury that directly resulted from White overplaying her 37 minutes in an overtime game. And when she comes to the bench during a timeout, instead of getting tactical support and encouragement from her coaching staff, she is getting yelled at and benched. This is what Cheryl Miller was responding to on ESPN. This is the message she was sending to Stephanie White. You are not supporting your star player, and the entire country can see it. Now here is what made the situation even worse after the game. Clark sat down at that post-game press conference, and a reporter asked her whether the officiating rule changes were impacting how Indiana plays defensively. Clark was in foul trouble. The easy answer was to talk about the refs, to deflect, to point at the officiating as the reason for the frustration. But that is not what Clark did. Clark sat at that press conference table and told the entire world that her problem tonight had nothing to do with the referees. She wasn't subtle about it. She wasn't diplomatic. She looked directly at that camera and delivered the clearest message she could deliver without saying a name. And every single person in that room understood exactly what she meant. Stephanie White was sitting right there. The coaching staff was right there. And Clark made sure they all heard her. What makes Miller's ESPN appearance so significant is that it represents a shift in how this situation is being covered. For weeks, the conversation around Clark and White has been happening on fan channels and social media accounts. But when ESPN dedicates segment time to discussing the relationship between a WNBA coach and her star player, when Cheryl Miller is sitting on that set, calling out the frustration boiling over and demanding White give Clark help, this is no longer just a fan conversation. This is mainstream sports media acknowledging that something is seriously wrong inside the Indiana Fever organization. And the organization's response to all of this criticism has somehow made everything worse. GM Amber Cox has been on social media blocking fans who criticize the roster construction. She blocked Jason Whitlock for pointing out the obvious failures of this front office. Cox went on a blocking spree rather than addressing the legitimate concerns being raised about how this organization is handling its star player. The same fans who filled arenas, who bought jerseys, who made the Indiana Fever must-see television are being blocked by their own GM for asking why Caitlin Clark is being mismanaged. The Indiana Fever were becoming America's team. Must-see television every single night. Caitlin Clark was delivering moments that nobody had seen before in women's basketball. She was breaking records, changing the conversation, and bringing an entirely new audience to the WNBA. And the organization that is supposed to be building around her has responded by yelling at her on the bench, blocking her fans online, and making tactical decisions that leave her exposed on both ends of the floor every single game. Cheryl Miller saw all of it. She sat on that ESPN set and delivered a message that Stephanie White cannot ignore. The frustration is boiling over. It is being seen. White has to give Clark help. These are not the words of a fan account. These are the words of a Hall of Famer on the biggest sports network in the world. And they should serve as a wake-up call to everyone inside the Indiana Fever organization. Because right now, the entire country is watching. And what they are seeing is a coaching staff that is failing the most important player this league has ever had. Caitlin Clark deserves better. She deserves a coach who makes adjustments to protect her. She deserves a front office that supports her instead of blocking her fans. She deserves to come to that bench during a timeout and get tactical help instead of getting yelled at. Cheryl Miller said it on ESPN. The fans have been saying it all season. And the footage that went viral this week makes it impossible to deny. Something has to change inside the Indiana Fever, and it needs to happen before it is too late. What do you think? Did Cheryl Miller say exactly what needed to be said? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want more breakdowns like this on everything happening with Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next one.